Welcome, good evening to our 7th year of Female Founders Series. And it's about 8 or 9 years ago I visited with Dave and Sam, and we were at the offices we said, what can we do to help small businesses grow in Vermont, and particularly small businesses run or founded by women, and how can we assist? And you came back to us and said, well, if you make a space available, and together we can, start to develop this program. And so we're very proud to host this now for the 7th season at Hotel Vermont. We've had over 1,600 people participate in these events over the years, 22 events, which covered probably 60 businesses or so in Vermont. And it's truly, really very special for us, a very special time to be hosting this. So I'm going to get out of the way and let Sam take this over. And I want you to have a great evening and enjoy this 7th season. And what better than film and media? Good way to start. Cheers.
Thank you, Hans. He lets us keep coming back. So I haven't crossed too many boundaries yet, thank God. Maybe it's the lucky number 7 here. Good evening, everyone, and feel free to fill these seats. If anyone wants to move up, that's totally fine. Welcome. I'm Sam Roach-Gerber. I am the Vice President at VCET, or Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies, and we work around the state to help advance entrepreneurship and innovation. We hope to grow high-paying jobs in the state through entrepreneurship and to sort of be the go-to resource for entrepreneurs starting businesses in Vermont. First of all, I want to thank Hans and Maddie and John and the whole team at Hotel Vermont for having us back to this amazingly cozy place. We were just talking about how they just nailed the balance between classy and cozy, which is just, that's the whole aesthetic I go for in general, so they really nailed it. And also thank you to our friends at the Media Factory who have been filming all 7 seasons for us, do an amazing job. They make sure that these events are accessible to everyone that wants to watch or listen to them. So thank you, Media Factory. You guys are awesome. So I wanted to start by just thanking Kristen Cantu. Kristen, can you raise your hand? Yay. Hi, Kristen. So Kristen came to me in August and said, Sam, my team at Vermont Production Collective, we're trying to do more events focused on women in film and media. And I know you probably have your first female founders event of the year totally ready to go and buttoned up, but, just throwing it out there if there's a chance. I was like, oh, thank God, I haven't planned anything. This is great. So Kristen saved my butt and came in with such an amazing idea, and these were her 3 picks. These were the 3 people that she wanted up here. And I read the bios and I said, holy crap. Yep. Rock stars. We need these people. And luckily they all said yes. So I feel extremely lucky, especially to Orly, who literally just did VTIFF, and I couldn't have asked her at a worse time to do an event. And she still said yes. So really, really thankful for all of them. So I think the best way to start this is just to have each of you introduce yourselves, because you each wear so many hats. I would be talking for 45 minutes straight just getting through it. So let's start with you, Orly, and we'll work our way down. Just who are you? What do you do?
You want all my hats?
All of them, every single one of them. The ones that you're most proud of, I guess.
Ooh. That'll be short. No, I'm joking. I'm Orly Yadin, and currently run the Vermont International Film Festival, which is a year-round organization, despite its name. It started off as a 1-event-a-year festival. We now run 3 film festivals, all very different, and we have monthly screenings. So I've been doing that since 2012. Since 2012, I became the executive director. I was on the board of VTIFF before. Before that, I volunteered at VTIFF, and so on. As you can tell by my accent, I'm not a native Vermonter, or even a native American. I came here from London, England. One always has to remember to give the country here. London isn't enough, I've learned. Where I was involved. I've always been involved in film in my adult life. I studied film and communication, and I got my first job in film, actually was working in a film archive And then I got a job in television in England to work as a researcher. So basically, I worked for a few years as a researcher on documentary film series, on documentary series, which involved going around the world looking for footage, which was probably the best job of my life, because I was paid to travel the world, not first class, but business class, and meet all these amazing people. And then I transitioned to writing and directing my own programs. I should call them programs because it was still within the broadcasting system, so not movies like, in the cinema. And I then created my own production company. I should stop, shouldn't I? Where we produced our own films. I switched from, I used to be in documentary field, got a bit bored with what I felt was a kind of standard TV demand, because I was working mainly in historical documentaries, and I just got bored with this kind of standard of, interview, archive footage, even if the subject was interesting. So I became involved, I want to give and explain how, in animation, and I discovered a whole new world of telling true stories. So I formed my own production company and made animated documentaries.
Amazing.
Okay, that's enough.
That's
Enough for now.
See, I couldn't have done that justice, so.
Well, you did other things.
Lauren
That's
Glenn.
something. There's more, but you'll tell us later.
If you remind me.
I will. I just love hearing about it. I'm Lauren Glenn Davitian, and I'm an anthropologist by training. I went to the University of Vermont, and when I graduated in 1982, I wanted to continue to make documentaries, but there was no portable video equipment at that time, if you can imagine. So I knocked on the door of the cable company knowing there was this thing called public access television, and how I knew that is an interesting story, but let's just say I knew it. And I went, and the cable company staff brought me to a closet marked closet, and they opened the door, and there was a piece of equipment in there, but it was by no means portable or usable. And so when I left, I realized that I had to make a transition from being a person who wanted to make documentaries to an organizer, so that we could liberate the means of production and distribution for not only myself, but other people in the community. Power to the people. So that shift happened pretty quickly, because the idea of public access television was one that time in Burlington in the early 80s caught on. I held a community meeting. People from the library came, the school came, just regular people who wanted to make things showed up, and a young lawyer who thought we had a pretty good idea showed up. And we were able, with that group, to go to what was then the regulatory commission of the state, called the Public Service Board, now the Public Utility Commission, because they regulated cable TV. And Cox Cable at that time wanted a rate increase, and they actually regulated cable pricing, believe that or not, but that was not for long, but they did. And we made a case for this thing called public access TV, which was channels on the cable system, equipment, funds, and we said that we wanted it for 5 communities in the state. And the cable company agreed. In subsequent years, they didn't always agree with anything that we wanted to do, but at that time they wanted their rate increase and they wanted to get it going. And Bernie Sanders, who was mayor, was also pushing to municipalize the cable TV system at that time. So they were under a lot of political pressure, thanks to Bernie. And it was a very exciting time, not only to be able to have this channel, start this channel, but to be part of a moment in political history in Burlington where community institutions were being created, the community health center, the land trust, the youth programs, public access television. It was this kind of moment when all of our friends were running city government, and we had the support of Bernie to go forth. So that channel is the Media Factory, who's here tonight. That was the public access channel. And Nat Air, who I worked with, was a video maker, and we joined up with people like Dan Higgins and Nat and other people that wanted to make television, and we produced a programming every week that ran on the channel. And long story short, that 1 hour, 2.5 hour program that we produced in the 80s became Town Meeting TV, a 24-hour TV government access channel in 1990, which we have been running ever since. And in addition to running that channel, I'll just quickly say this because I think it's germane. In 1990, the phone company started to get into the video business. They had this thing called video dial tone. And I mean, imagine, it's still analog. We're still analog time, 1990. And as soon as that happened, I realized that the whole world was going to change and that we had to start to advocate and to demonstrate what public access and public benefits meant, not just in a cable era, but in a telecommunications ecosystem. And that has obviously evolved. And cable revenue now, many years later, is going down because people are cutting the cord to have another cord, the internet cord. So we have done many different projects in that period of time, especially since 1990, to demonstrate what public access means, which I can talk about a little bit. But that is the thing that makes me most interested and excited, is starting up projects to demonstrate what public benefit really can be in essentially what is now a data ecosystem. It's not even an entertainment and information ecosystem. It's a data collection system, surveillance system. So the issues are even more acute, and the role of advocacy in addition to content production is incumbent upon all of us. But that's been what has driven my work.
Yes. Awesome. Cool. My name is Monica Donovan. I'm the founder of Heady, Vermont, and the co-founder of Jam Creative. I'm honored to be in such esteemed company today. And, I think you guys have a lot of great background in film and media and have done some really pioneering work. And I also want to thank Kristen from Well-Told Films for the invitation as well. So I started Jam Creative first. I went to the Rochester Institute of Technology in Rochester, New York, where I'm from. I was always interested in visual, not just visuals, but writing and design, everything down to not just what I was writing, but the font that it was in and, how I told that story. So I was always kind of leaning in that direction. But I ended up getting a 4-year degree in photography from RIT, and I met my future jam partner there. We worked at the photo equipment cage together and bonded over lenses. And, we ended up together both in business partners and life partners. And I ended up working for Rodney Smith in New York City, not really New York City, but just outside New York. While I was still in college, I also went to the Maine Media Workshops, which is a pretty well-known film and photo school up in Maine. That was kind of like college all over again. That was pretty fun. So I got to work for a few really cool people and learn some really neat stuff over those years. And I also started my own business right out of college. And so one of the things I wish I had been taught, I think, is how to run your own business in general. It would have been really, really helpful, or at least a few more tools in bookkeeping and things I had to sort of teach myself along the way. We started by shooting weddings, and photography is, a lot of storytelling. And we got into video and film through photography. It just sort of, the cameras we were using became more and more advanced, and it was just sort of a natural transition to start adding B-roll clips and different things to the things we were already doing, and we grew into commercial work as well. We've worked with a number of clients in Vermont, including Seventh Generation. Most recently, we did an ice cream shoot for Sisters of Anarchy in their kitchen. We do all kinds of things. We went to Tuscany for a bike tour shoot. So kind of all over the place, but we produce a lot of, video and photo for different clients to kind of tell their story through their brand and to sort of, talk about what they're doing and help them meet their goals in that front. And the other hat that I kind of wear, and I sort of fell into this by accident, like Jam Creative is the degree I have, and it's what I went to school for, and I actually use that every day, and that's awesome. And but when I was growing up, I had some run-ins with the law around cannabis, and I think it really sort of defined some of my deepest beliefs in terms of personal freedom and war on drugs. And I really it took me years to unravel sort of what happened to me. And as I started talking about legalizing cannabis in the state of Vermont, I sort of accidentally became an advocate, which is sort of, I think, how advocacy happens a lot of the time, is you just sort of see a need and fill it, and next thing you know, you're doing that. And so that's kind of what happened to me. And I just started, basically, it was a blog, and did an event at the Skinny Pancake. And we had I think 15 people showed up for our event. And we ended up, necessarily kind of doing some advocating around this, because the media was not talking about cannabis in an elevated way, and they were still using bad read puns and kind of not really treating the subject with the respect it sort of deserved, especially considering the amount of harm that has been caused over the decades from this. So, and that kind of grew into this thing, and Heady, Vermont now has tens of thousands of followers across all our platforms, and we're sort of a central resource, so if you want to find out now where to go find a dispensary that's locally owned, you can look in our app, and you can go on our website. And so we do events as well. We do Heady's Cup. And so my life is sort of, it's cannabis, it's media, it's storytelling, it's photo and events to some degree. But all of it, I think the core is, I do a lot of content for marketing through businesses, and I tell people's stories across all of those platforms. I think is a really common theme. And advocacy I sort of fell into, but I'm a big believer in freedom, digital, access to information, and the way that we consume information, and the way that information is regulated are very important subjects to me, and the way that we sort of get that digital content and how that's being twisted around. So all of that is really interesting to me, and hopefully we can touch on some cool subjects today and discuss some fun things. But I'm very honored to be here, so thank you.
Can you believe they all said yes to me? I'm so amazing. So I think we have to start by just saying, how's everyone feeling post-election? I mean, I'm riding my Becca high right now. I don't know about everyone else. Sending the first woman to Congress, finally. Can we get an amen for Becca? Thank you. Yes. Does anyone want to kind of share their reflections? Maybe Monica does.
Yeah. I mean, for the state of Vermont, I'm very happy that we passed both of those amendments.
Yeah. Great. How are you all feeling?
About time.
Yeah, well, we just finished months and months of election coverage. So I don't even know, 60 forums. And then last night we had a results program, so we reported the results for Chittenden County mostly. So I'm a little tired, and I'm really glad it's over. I was thinking yesterday, I had to kind of not read the national papers because everybody was so upset about the possibility of a red wave. And I thought, well, when the Democrats are ahead and then they don't win as much, everyone says the polls are wrong. I said, well, can't that be true of the Republicans? I mean, so I think it is. I think our country is of voters is split pretty in half between two, the death throes of the economic order as it stands and the change, the demographic and economic changes happening in the country. And, in our business, we like to hear all views. So, we may not agree with people, and we may, but if Donald Trump came and wanted to be on TV, we'd put him on TV. If someone from the Klan came and wanted to be on TV, we'd put them on TV. We'd make them take their hood off, but we would put them on television because we believe that we believe in this idea of free speech, which is a much more controversial concept now. It used to be much more straightforward, and now it's not, because free speech is equated with hate speech in some cases. But it's my belief that pretty much every voice needs to be at the table, because unless it is, when it's your turn, you will be prohibited from being at the table, number one. And number two, the only way we get to better ideas about how the community should be is actually to listen to one another. And I think that is not happening. I think people are frightened, and I think people aren't listening. And that's that's hard. So the work we do at CCTV and Town Meeting TV and the 24 community media centers around the state is to set the table so people who believe whatever they want to believe can come and talk. So I celebrate that. And
how do you do
Yeah.
that? I mean, I think that's one of the challenges that we all have is how do you kind of set aside your own beliefs to create that platform? And I think many of us take free speech for granted, right? And, I think we have a responsibility to uphold it. And I think that it's super important, especially the way our country looks now today. Can you talk a little bit about how, the tools that you use to ensure that you create that space?
well, I think we have to start with curiosity. We have to actually genuinely be interested in another person's experience. So I think it starts there.
That's
And
why
I
we're
think-
all here, right?
Yeah, and I think we also. I mean, I'm an anthropologist, as I said. So for me, everyone's interesting, no matter what. Asking someone for directions is a really interesting experience, right? So I think. So that would be my response. But I'd be interested to hear what other people here think.
Yeah, I think curiosity is a really important piece of business as well, right? And finding the answers and getting inspiration. But I don't know, Orly, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, VTIFF, the Vermont International Film Foundation, or Festival, the acronym stands for both. We're not a public access channel, so we're not paid for by taxpayers' money either, or anything like that. However, our mission statement, because we're a 501c3, is bringing the world to Vermont through film. And I think this is apart from the fact that I consider cinema a very, very important art form. In fact, it's the most democratic art form because really a ticket to go and see a movie, it's $8, $10, $12 compared to seeing any other kind of wonderful, dance or theater. It's something that's really affordable for everyone or most people. But also because it's got the word international in our title, bringing the world to Vermont, what we try and do, because almost all our events are curated. We select the film. Many festivals are just open to submissions and anybody. We curate. We act as curators. We choose. We research. We choose. We're very, very careful. We think that by showing films or film series or programs or festival that include films made by independent filmmakers from all quarters of the globe, all types of filmmakers, is a way of opening people's eyes here to different sensibilities, different interests, different ways of expressing yourself. In a way that, if you just go on, and so we're very, very careful, for certainly the Vermont International Film Festival, to make sure that the final program, we watch hundreds of films, we have a programming committee and so on, but what ends up in the end is not just a selection of really excellent films, but we can never represent every country and every county on earth, even if we ran films day and night all year. But at least a representative from, the different continents, from different types of filmmakers, certainly diverse genders, diverse skin colors, as diverse as we can. And if you watch a film, and especially, I speak as somebody who was not born here, and in fact lived most of my life elsewhere on another continent. Americans especially are so used to just watching American films or English language films. Maybe there's a few films from the UK, Australia, I don't know, occasionally. Whereas, for example, in Europe, people are used to watching films in all kinds of languages, and they're used to reading subtitles, Here, by bringing non-English language, we also show American films, of course, but, by bringing many films from other countries in other language, just hearing how other people speak is an eye-opener, I think. I mean, it opens your mind. It makes you question other cultures, other ways of expressing opinions or expressing desire or expressing any kind of interest. To me, that's very educational. And it's, Lauren Glenn was talking about listening to the other. This is another form, I think, through our festivals, through our programming, of learning to listen to the other.
Yeah, I don't want to admit the age I was when I found out that I had an accent. So that just goes and tells you, right? I should have been watching more foreign films, obviously. So, Monica, you talked a little bit about starting Heady, Vermont, and sort of like, I feel like there's a thread there too, right, of building the trust, building the credibility. Can you talk a little bit about the motivation there and sort of how that ties in as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that working with starting Heady has given me a new appreciation for delivering information, like especially boring information when you talk about public access and all these like community meetings where it's just like the select board or whatever. The appreciation of the people who take that information and then deliver it to the public in a way that is somewhat interesting, which it's still not, It's interesting to like this subset of people. And so it's given me an appreciation for the challenge and just of like taking all of that and making it something that people can kind of read and go through. And I kind of agree with what you've said as well about Americans are used to just sort of watching films, right? They're watchers, And so we've really tried to like engage our audience and get them involved and give them ways to do things. And so because in the beginning, the unique challenge with cannabis is that it has restrictions that other things do not. Everything is difficult, laws take forever to pass, and then when it comes to cannabis itself, when it comes to media and marketing and information, you're very restricted in a lot of ways. So it's actually doubly challenging to do any sort of marketing or content or storytelling for cannabis because we find ourselves running into roadblocks on Facebook and in other areas that you just don't see. But one of the things that we kind of just started with and that we've been doing continuously is taking these, and that's public access, right? It's taking these sort of like meetings that the control board are doing and finding ways to deliver them and tangible and like to break that down for people and kind of figure that out. And to also give some of these businesses a little bit of voice as well as they're starting and as they're developing in this sort of really new space that nobody knows anything about, and sort of showing some of those problems and like figuring out ways to problem solve throughout all of that. So that's kind of a partial answer to, I suppose, your question.
No, you nailed it. Yeah, I think like having a space that's so new and trying to navigate that, I mean, that's a huge challenge.
It's challenging for everybody.
Yeah, but I think, you're all founders. You've all started something, and you all like spoke about it so gracefully that it didn't sound hard, but I'm sure there were parts of it that were very, very hard. And I know as an advisor to many entrepreneurs, sometimes starting is the hardest part, right? You're just meeting these barriers. It's all new. It's unfamiliar. Maybe the infrastructure doesn't exist yet, and you get to that dead end closet where there's the equipment you can't use, metaphorically speaking, of course. But I just wanted each of you to talk a little bit about early days. So Orly starting your production company, Lauren Glenn like getting CCTV off the ground, starting Jam, like. Think about yourself in that time and what the barriers were that you were facing. If you could just each talk a little bit about that. Lauren, again, let's start with you. What was it like? What were those days like? And, if you're talking directly to some entrepreneurs that are trying to start something now, like what kind of advice would you give to get over those barriers?
Well, it started a lot of things. Some have been easier than others. Starting public access wasn't that hard, because there was a regulatory process and we figured out what it was and we followed the rules and we got the funding, and then we made no money for a long time making television, and then we were able to get town meeting TV going and we were able to pay ourselves and have a job, and that wasn't so hard. But in the I don't know, it just didn't seem, I think in that case it was the motivation and the mission and the excitement and the moment and the zeitgeist, like all of it was just, it was kind of it, but there were some hard parts, I will tell you.
Timing, right? It's
The
timing is so important.
The timing was good.
Yeah.
But I remember in that period, I decided I was going to have a trade show conference on telecommunications, and it was 1986. And I decided I was going to do this trade show. And I went and I got 50 vendors, and I booked Memorial Auditorium, and I organized workshops, and it was really hard. It was really hard because I had no idea the scope of what I was doing. You know, I had this idea and I didn't think it out, right? So I think planning is always a good tool. But I didn't. I just decided, you know, with the arrogance of youth. And then it happened on the
Tool.
yeah. It happened on the worst snowstorm in 20 years.
No.
So all the vendors came to Memorial Auditorium and loaded in, but not one person came to this thing. Yeah, I know, it sounds so sad. It did take me 6 months to kind of recover from it, I must admit.
Yes.
But I felt like, okay, well, that was my master's degree. Like I learned a lot doing it. And I think the one thing that we all know, but is really important to remember, is that failure, right, not being successful, is just such a rich experience. And we learn so much from it. And that for every great success that we have, there's stumbling that is involved. I mean, people just don't wake up and become wildly successful. We work hard every day to put one foot in front of the other to achieve the goal and the picture. But if you have a picture in your head, that's what I think distinguishes people that accomplish big things from people that don't, is that you have a vision, an idea, a concept, and then the skill that's involved is mobilizing other people to help you. Yeah. And that's the thing that took me a very long time to learn. Yeah. Because being sort of an only child kind of person. So that, I would say, those three things would be sort of vision, love your failures, and delegate, and like engage other people in the effort, so that you're not the only person putting the chairs away.
Yes, delegating is important.
Yeah.
I think, shout out to Emma and Nicole, my teammates. What's up, guys?
Exactly.
I think, too, like, what struck me just then, too, is that resilience is a skill that you have to build, right? Because, you know, you said it took you 6 months to get over it, and I think we don't give ourselves that grace sometimes. You know, it's like something happens, a setback, you know, maybe an investor passes on your idea and they don't want to invest in your company, right? And it's like, that's devastating. They don't believe in you. They don't believe in your vision, right? Like, that really sucks. And I think entrepreneurs have that pressure to like get right back up, right? But sometimes it takes a little while, and that's okay. And I think, you know, reminding ourselves that resilience is a skill that we need to build and work on is important too.
I would actually build on that a little bit, and it's a great question too, because it is challenging and it is a big struggle. And I would add to that, not only having a vision in your head, but it's easy to get distracted by new ideas, I think, when you're starting out on something new, and everything looks cool and shiny and like a great idea. And I think adding what makes sense while keeping focused on your vision is another good little piece of advice on top of that. And it does take a long time. You know, I started Heady with somebody else. I told them, I said, listen, it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to take forever. We're going to make no money. And he quit his job like a week later. And I said, listen, that is the opposite of what I said. Because I had started a business and I made no money for 5 years. And that's exactly what happened to me. So yes, it takes forever and you will struggle doing it. So I'm totally on board 100% of that. But yeah, and like being patient and you know, not dumping everything, being realistic about your sort of current financial situation as well is a big piece of advice I would give. Do what you have to do. Like if you need to keep working for a little while to support your dream, that's fine. You might work a little too much for a while, but as long as it's like somewhat temporary, you'll be okay. So that would be my little piece of advice on that.
Yeah. Oh, so true. Orly's like, I can tell you're like back when you started the production company. Bring us there with you.
Yeah, that actually wasn't that hard. I mean, it's possible that it's for similar reasons, although it was a different country and the aim was different, but that Lauren Glenn mentioned, it was at a particular period, cultural period in England or in London, or in the UK generally, in the 80s. How many of you were born were already in existence in the 80s? All right.
Barely.
Where there was still, the government still believed that it was important to support the arts. And so there was a new TV channel was created by the government. It was called Channel 4. It still exists, but it's not what it was, because politically the UK has changed a lot. And the idea of Channel 4 was that it's there to support, that Channel 4 itself would not produce anything. It would commission from independent producers all around the country. It would give money to, so you had to pitch, and if your pitch was approved, but there's about 10 years of huge support for independent filmmakers, independent producers, new ideas. Their aim was not to make money. They just had to survive. So the reasons for accepting an idea was not, will it make us money? Because it was paid for by the government. Do you see what I mean? So it was, that atmosphere no longer exists. I mean, England has followed the US and has become a totally capitalist country. But at the time, it was still there. So that was not difficult. I'll tell you what was most difficult.
Please, give us something.
And even then, it wasn't that difficult, but relatively, is actually my first year as the executive director of VTIFF. Because when I was on the board of VTIFF, I'm not going to go into great detail, but basically, VTIFF has existed since 1985. It was founded by two amazing people who founded it as a kind of peace and justice festival, and so on. So it had a great period, then it went down. It all depended on the leaders. Leaders are not the only thing that's important in any business organization, but a good leader is very important. When I sort of joined during that time, we're talking kind of late, 2000, 99, 2000, no, that's not what I'm talking about. 2006, 7, 8, whatever. Pardon?
Small details.
Yeah. VTIFF was at a very low point. It had no executive director. There was just a very small volunteer board who all had jobs, other jobs. And even though they believed in they did their best, but they basically didn't have time and to really. And after I was on the board for a year and a half, I had absorbed, I'd learned and I thought I know what the problem is. The problem is this organization needs a director to take it forward, to do something with it. And it took me a long time to persuade the board. The board didn't agree because the board decided we couldn't afford to pay a director. And my thought was we couldn't afford not to, because otherwise we might as well shut down. So eventually I said, I am willing to step down from the board and I'll be the director for a year. Let me try and see what I can do. Several of the board members immediately resigned because they thought it was irresponsible. But the vote of the board was that, okay, they accepted my proposal. So I stepped down from the board. And for a year, I worked from home. I mean, I was the only one, and I worked from home. And I worked 24/7. And that's what I mean. It's like at the beginning, you just work. But like Lauren Grant said, and like you said, I had an idea of where we should be going. I had a direction. I had an image of what this festival, at the time was still just one event a year, could be doing and why I thought it could be beneficial to the community. So gradually, but it took time. And the first year I thought, my husband would divorce me. He never saw me. And things like that. I didn't suffer, but it was hard. And then it gradually became what we are today.
Well, that's why you have to be passionate about your idea, right? Is because you do have to make sacrifices, whether it's your time or spending more time with family or on yourself or whatever, money, whatever it may be. I feel like that's a really great segue from building a 501c3 to Lauren Glenn and Common Good Vermont. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, but before that,
Oh, please.
there was the Old North End Community Technology Center, and that we wrote a page proposal to create a community technology center for long-term unemployed people to learn internet skills, because it was 1995. And the city of Burlington got an enterprise community grant and gave us $500,000. Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I raised millions for this project, but it was really not a job training project or a technology project. It was a social service project. And the reason people are unemployed for long periods of time has nothing to do with technology skills. And everything to do with supports and not being able to operate in traditional environments. So I learned that. But I was really good at raising money because it was a great idea. And foundations funded it, and we got federal grants, but I was surrounded by these I don't know, it was sort of the ship of fools is probably the best way to describe it. The people that I hired to run it, because I wasn't really good at hiring people, I saw the best in them, but they never did their best.
And they're all here tonight.
Yeah.
Welcome, guys.
Yeah.
How's it going?
No,
Just
the,
kidding.
no, the rock stars here tonight
Gotcha.
with me. But in any event, there was a lot I didn't know about this gigantic undertaking. It was not a one-day technology conference. It was a multi-million-dollar project that I just did not have the skills for. And it was really hard. I mean, it was like torture. And and I had to decommission it because it just wasn't anything that I could do, and there wasn't anything anybody else wanted to take on. And so we kind of peeled off parts. We did like what they do when venture capitalists come in and they take companies apart. We took the community computer center and gave that to the library. We took the business part of training long-term and unemployed people, and we just stopped doing that, and we focused on nonprofits. And from there,
I see where we're going
we
here.
created a nonprofit strategy practice, which I could get excited about and understood how to do, communication strategy. And from there, when the community foundation wanted to come up with some replacement for the Vermont Association of Nonprofits, which their business model didn't work, they said, here's $50,000, create a new model for nonprofit support. And we said, well, we're good party planners and we're good network builders, so we can do this thing called Common Good Vermont, which is a web-based networking events membership, but you didn't have to pay resource for nonprofit organizations. It still exists, that we spun off ultimately to the United Way. So that was how that happened. And it wouldn't have happened, Common Good Vermont, which is a great idea. Just got to say.
I still send people to Common Good Vermont.
It's a great idea. It's an
Yeah.
amazing resource. I'm so proud of it. And Morgan Webster runs it. She took that. She said, she did what you did. She said, I'm taking this. It was successful. It was thriving at the time, but she said, I'm going to be in charge of this thing. And so that's another gift that you get when you're a founder, is you encounter people who are willing to take the vision and make it their own. And that is a precious, precious gift that you encounter in this work if you're making better choices about who you work with and you are open to the talent that there is in this community.
Yeah.
And
also to
Jordan's
recognize
here.
your own limitations and to know where to ask for help.
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Did you have something to say about that?
I would tend to agree with that. Good help is extremely. I think when I I got very lucky when I brought on my first staff person, but after that, I spent a lot of time. I was like, wow, I got really lucky with this person. I was like, because it took me probably a few more months. And yeah, finding the people that fit and that are going to stick around for a long time is a very difficult thing to do. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I want to talk about funding your business, your dream, your organization, and you've all done it in very different ways, some for-profit, some non-profit. Lauren Glenn apparently is an amazing fundraiser, so I'm going to keep that in mind. But I just would like each of you to talk about how you monetize something, whether it's, getting foundational support from donors, whether it's figuring out your pricing and making sure that you're, have the right sweet spot of the number of clients or the type of work you take on, whatever it is. That tends to be a huge hurdle, especially for first-time founders that are getting an idea off the ground. So if each of you could talk a little bit about that, Monica, we'll start with you.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Just how was that experience for you, and what advice would you give?
And what advice will I give on specifically on price or monetizing
your business. And, we talk a lot of, V said, about the difference between a good idea and a good business, right?
For
Making
sure.
something financially viable so you can continue to do it.
Yes, and I will say the last 2 years were particularly challenging for Jam Creative, for both Jam Creative and for Heady, Vermont. Jam did a little bit better because we were a commercial production business, but the pandemic was really, really brutal, I think, especially for a lot of creatives and sole proprietor type businesses. And so with Jam, it's pretty straightforward. We have a set of pricing that we think is fair and takes into account not just all the work that goes into it. So, right, the pre-production, the communication with the client. There's all the little details, all that time that you spend really kind of adds up. Your time adds up. Time your cell phone day. It's actually kind of devastating how little you make per hour sometimes when you put it together. But then also things like licensing. What's the use for the stills and video? How are they using it? So there's a lot that kind of goes into it. But, that has sort of evolved. It took us a long time to figure out how to do that. And how to do it in a way that made sense and that communicated to the client very clearly what they were going to get and for what. With Heady, it's interesting. People always they're like, how does Heady make money? And it's a media and events platform, right? And so we have a couple of principal sort of tiers, and those are we do a lot of digital and advertising. And we have a directory for businesses, so businesses can promote themselves. We have membership for people, so you can be a member and get discounts on things. And then we have a ton of content. Some of that is sponsored content, so we do monetize our content as well. And so we do it in a few different areas, but it's really diversified. And I think one of the things that the pandemic kind of taught me was about that Heady had a pretty strong, and we also had a wedding photography business that we've sort of been scaling down. But the weddings in particular were pretty brutally hit, and Heady was as well, the events section. And it taught me a lot about just balancing out, looking at numbers and where we got, and just really dropping the event side of things a little bit so that we weren't relying on it so much for revenue. And so we made some really nice changes in the wake of that I think will insulate us a little better. Hopefully that never happens again. But, just to sort of, when something does happen, to sort of look at how you've diversified your different streams and are you getting if you have clients, are you getting all of your business from one client? What happens if that client drops you? And so just looking at, we noticed with Jam, one of our clients was growing and they were taking they were a good chunk of our revenue, and we decided we needed to go and maybe just add a couple more just to sort of because it was making me a little nervous. If this client dropped us, we would really have to figure some things out. And so that on a small scale, I think if you're doing work with clients, just be really mindful that you have a few different streams of revenue coming in, so that you're not totally done if somebody drops you.
Such good advice. Yes. Account for your time. Even if you're not paying yourself right away, just know how much time you're spending on your business. Sorry, I can't help myself. Can't turn it on and off.
One of the lessons we learned when we did the Community Tech Center was pricing, how to price what it costs to operate. And of course, it's not the cost of labor, it's labor plus. Of course, more people know that went to business school, which It would have been fun to have gone to business school. I think it's never too late, but I feel I've learned a lot of those things. But it isn't too late. It would be very interesting. So pricing was a really important lesson that we learned then. And Nancy Wasserman, some of you may know her, she came in and helped us figure that out. So that was a good piece of advice. But as I mentioned before, the primary revenue source for the work that we'd done for a long time had been cable revenue. So those of you who have cable TV still, I'm not sure you do, I'm not going to ask how many people do. There's a 5%, 5.5% VIG on your bill, and that goes towards public access television. And so as the number of cable subscribers decline, that revenue goes down. So we've known this is coming. So that's why we diversified into projects like the Old North End Community Technology Center or Common Good Vermont, or we have a production company. Now we have a project that we work with called the Vermont Language Justice Project, which started by translating COVID messages into multiple languages, and now we're translating public health messages into 15, 16 languages. So that's grant funded, and that's partially federally grant funded. So right now we have a kind of combination of fees for service, cable contract revenue, grant funding, some philanthropy. So we have a mix. And the other thing I think that's also good to know is that when you add a new project, it reduces the cost of the overhead for the whole organization. So adding a project like Vermont Language Justice reduces the cost of the cable TV, town meeting TV business, right? Because it's carrying the costs of what you have to spend to run an organization, no matter how many projects you have, right? So thinking in those ways. So we've gone from being totally strung out with our line of credit in the early 2000s to having 6 months of operating money in the bank. And that is a great credit to how hard everyone works, but it's also, I think, a credit to thinking that we're talking about sustainability. We need to be healthy and sustainable to weather these variety of changes in the economy and in the world.
Good advice.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that in order to reduce your operating costs, you just add, if you add more projects or programs, then it's split. Then the cost for each one is less, which, I totally get it. And, we've also increased over the years. We've added more and more programs. At the same time, it's a question of capacity as well. People are always saying, well, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? And you have to weigh very carefully, do you actually have the capacity to do that? And occasionally we say, no, we just can't do it because it'll just, we won't be able to do it well. And it'll affect all the other things that we hope we're doing well now, but they will be affected. So it's a constant balance between growing and taking on more things and serving the community in a bigger range of ways, at the same time knowing your own strengths, basically. And the other thing is, in terms of our sources of revenue, like every nonprofit basically, is a mixture of grants, business sponsorship, philanthropy, and in our particular case, box office, ticket sales, and membership dues. So it's a mixture, and it's spread more or less evenly. However, I always tell myself and tell my staff, your time is worth money, Your time is worth money. So everything you do, you get excited about something, think about how many hours or days or weeks you're going to have to devote to produce this, and how much, therefore, it costs us to produce a particular event, say, or a program, and see if it's worthwhile. Even grant writing, which I do most of the grant writing, I always ask myself, how long is it going to take me to write this grant? And what are the chances of getting, and how much am I likely to get? And if it takes me more than X, if it takes me longer, and I don't get paid a huge amount, but if it takes me longer, i.e. the cost to the company is my time, longer than what I'm likely to get, I don't write the grant, you know. It's just not worth it. Some people spend weeks and weeks on writing grants. It's only worth it if you have a good chance of getting lots and lots of money. Otherwise, no.
This is a little close to home. Yeah, Dave and I, how many times a week do we say, sounds great, what do we have to kill to make it happen, right? Because you have a limited time, limited resources, and
energy.
Totally, yeah. And I think that's one of the hardest things for me is I'll get a great idea, have a great request, and it's like, well, what goes away to do that, right?
Exactly.
Especially if it's a team.
I just want to add, there are currently 2 grants, I think, available. One is a Creative Futures grant, I think is currently available to artists in the state of Vermont. So if you haven't looked into that and you're still suffering from the pandemic, you might want to take a look at it. I also applied for this. So.
Great. Good advice. Yeah.
January 3rd for the second half.
SAS says January 3rd.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
in stages. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Awesome. So, Orly, you just wrapped up your festival. Can you tell us how it went?
It went really well.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't know what to expect because it's the first time we're doing a festival as large as the one we had in 2019, pre-COVID, in terms of number of days, number of theaters, number of film events, screenings, and events. And we had no idea who would come. I mean, we knew people would come, but we didn't know how many. We did have a festival last October, but it was smaller, and we were still checking vaccination, and we got pushback on that, and things like that. So it was it was okay, but it was a smaller audience. This time, we're not quite back to the admission numbers of 2019, but we're at 83%, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And I thought the program was good, and people seemed to love it, and we had great food every evening. It's very important. Never forget drink and food, whatever you do.
We never.
You know, all those people, those vendors that you brought into, if you'd said there's going to be drink and food, some people might have braved the ice storm. It's amazing what people will do for that. But I also, so it was great. And by the way, I made a joke semi-joke about drink and food. But honestly, anything you do, it's not just about feeding people. Especially a cultural event, and I use the word culture in a very loose sense, it's not just about going to see the film. It's what happens when you come out of the film. The other people you can talk to about it, talk and argue about and exchange ideas and recommend and so on and so forth. And what better way to do it is over drinking and eating. I mean,
Hells
that's when we
yes.
all open up.
I'm saying.
Anyway, it was
Gets
great.
it. Yeah, that's awesome. And just leading into that, what do you think the future of the film industry looks like in
Ooh.
Vermont?
That's in Vermont.
Yeah.
Probably no different from any other state.
Okay.
That's the $1 million question. You
Yeah.
know, that thousands of articles have been written about it. I don't know. I mean, I think, there's all the blockbusters are surviving, and people go to that, those tentpole, whether it's the Marvel franchise or things like that, which is not something we do anyway. As for so-called art house, independent, I still believe they will survive. You just need to know how to do it, and it's not the same as it was 10 years ago. But I think you can develop an audience. You need to know how to present the films, what you build around it. Sometimes you need events around it. One thing, you asked me about this last festival, is something that we struggle with, but we're not the only one. All the film festivals, probably in the world, but certainly in North America, and art house cinemas, they all say, where are the young people? Because young people, say 30 and under, I don't know, have not grown up necessarily going to the cinema, and so on and so forth. What does one do to get the young people? What really, really pleased us this year, we had more young people come to our festival than ever before. And it's not because we suddenly showed lots of horror films. Somehow I asked somebody, why, how come you're all here, you know? And they said, because it's hip. I was so pleased. Yeah.
That's why they're all here.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's hip. I have one more question, and then I promise I'll let you all ask questions. But Lauren Glenn, you have been at this 86. Is that when you started it?
No, it's
82. Oh my God.
Yeah, 38 years.
38 years.
Can you tell? Come on.
No, honestly, I can't tell. You look great. Look like $1 million. We'll be talking about skincare later. I need some tips. What is the secret to longevity? You know, I think I don't mean with your skin. I meant
No.
with the organization.
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
The 5 Tibetan postures. Do you know about the 5
Oh
Tibetans?
my God, we're getting to it. All
Yeah.
right, get comfortable, people. Get comfortable.
Look those up.
Okay.
Go Google that.
Oh my God.
Well, I have been blessed, and it's been a blessing and a burden, but mostly a blessing to know what I needed to do at a very young age.
Yeah.
So I knew this thing that we've done had to be done. So I never had any question about what to do or where to work or that was just, yeah. So unlike Orly, who has had a circuitous path and done many things in her realm, I've done lots of things, but in this one organization that we created.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of this vision, this idea. I think it's because I have this, Armenian, Scottish, thing of forward, just working hard and not stopping ever. Might be it.
I need some of
Genocide
that.
survivors. And then I think also the variety of ways that this mission has manifested itself. So, one of the things I did want to mention, because Jordan Mitchell is here, who's our archivist, we have this archive of 41,000 programs that were cataloged by Nat Ayer, who I worked with for years very carefully, and continue to be cataloged. And it's this amazing asset. And so I think there's also an added effect, which is I'm very proud of the work that we have done. I'm proud of the 24 community media centers in Vermont. I'm proud of the work all across the world. I'm proud of the role that we have played in it. And that's what kind of keeps you going. And I think that's true for all of us, is that we have these things, these projects, these sweaters, these businesses, these botanicals. I mean, the things that we are important to us is why we get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And it's all about getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
Because once you're up, then you got to get going.
And be proud of what you do.
Yeah.
We all just want to be proud of what we do, right?
Yeah. So, yes.
That's awesome.
And
I love
also
that.
living in Burlington, Vermont, I have to also just say, is being in this place during this period of time with the people that are here has been unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, just a huge blessing. So I would say that's another piece, because I'm not sure what we did we could do anywhere else. I really don't.
Also, you've helped shape that community and given people a platform.
It's iterative process.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh man.
Thanks
I
for
don't
that
wanna let you
question.
down.
That's a
I don't
good
want to let you
question.
down. All right.
It's not
Let's
possible.
get to you all for some questions here. Where are we?
Questions? Who's got a hand?
Don't be shy.
Come on.
Oh, we got
Of course,
one.
it's the back row,
Of
right?
course, yeah. Put Dave to work. I'm doing all the hard work up here.
But when it comes to engaging the youths, but engaging that next generation, because I think that everything that you touched on is extremely vital and very important. But when it comes to public access or International Film Festival and all these topics that now as media is consumed so quickly, and whether it's TikTok or how, I don't really have an answer or question or even thoughts, but Any, yeah, smooth brain, no thoughts. What do you have? Does anyone have thoughts on how do we get to that point where the next generation is interested in having those experiences, having those conversations, and being interested in public access and film festivals and all these really important creative channels that do make such a big cultural impact on the way we live and act and behave and treat each other?
It's a great question.
Orly, do you want to start?
I think youth are engaged. They may be focused on slightly different things, the environment, or things like that. I think every generation has its passion. In the 60s, it was anti-Vietnam here, or student demonstrations in Paris. And then in the 80s, I don't know what it was, but it was something. I think every generation has its passions and do get engaged. I don't think we can impose, people who are no longer 30 or even 40. I don't think we can impose engagement. All we can do is continue to do what we believe in, and then some will follow and some will create their own paths. It's not a very good answer, but I really don't know what to say.
Well, it sounds like you didn't have that problem this year, so.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, but may have been a fluke. I don't know.
We were talking today, we were debriefing on our election coverage, and we do a thing called Exit Voices. So we interview people when they're coming out of the polling places. And this group of UVM students took it upon themselves to do an Exit Voices. We had worked with them, but they took that up themselves. And they interview all these young people who are incredibly engaged in the political system, and they have all the reasons why they voted, the things they cared about. They knew, the propositions that were on the ballot. They're not remote. They're part of the community. And this group of young people made this video and brought it in and showed up in our studios last night. And we're working with a group of young high school kids who are making programs and doing things. So I think that there is an understanding that TikTok has got its limitations. Let's just put it that way. And that if you want to really be engaged in non-commercial media making, our community media centers are where we do that. And we try to create a hospitable place for everyone, including younger people. And could we do a better job of it? Of course. But young people beget young people. And so a few people want to go to the movies, and then their friends come, and then pretty soon there's posses of them at the film festival. So I think that I think that the analog era has some nostalgia for people. So there's that. It's not completely gone out of the world. And the public access TV or community media has an appeal because the mission of what we're trying to do is relevant. It's not irrelevant, and that creates a magnetic field that brings people who care about that to us and to all of the work that we do.
Did you want to add?
Yeah, and so the question is, how do we engage people, not just young people, but people?
Mostly young people.
Mostly young people.
Yeah, the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will say, I use a lot of different platforms to sort of engage people. And I actually have like a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the tools that I use for marketing and social engagement. But yeah, I think that cannabis is easy because it's kind of like sexy content to begin with, so it's very attention getting. But in terms of keeping people engaged, like honestly, just like telling a compelling story keeps people engaged, for sure.
Totally. Hi.
I am a serial entrepreneur and very open feminist, and I want to dive into the female founder side of things. So do you all each have a humorous, ridiculous, sexist moment where somebody thought you couldn't and you showed them? Or did you have a moment that went, I need to change my tack. I need to figure out, as a female in this, career path, what I'm doing?
I could certainly, I would be happy to start. So a moment or humorous story. Well, I have a couple. Sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes it's really, really overt. I've had everything from like people asking me. I showed up at my own event, the Heady's Cup. It's a Growers Cup. I run the event, and a guy asked me if I was there to teach yoga. I was wearing leggings. Of course, they teach yoga. It's so subtle. That's a little bit more subtle, right? An overt one, I was actually asked to speak earlier this year, and I went to a networking event. Actually, Mariki was there. This guy that was running the event sort of like harassed and degraded my friend. So it was like a really like in your face, like very sort of misogynistic moment, and that like made me question like my presence at that event. So that was like a very in your face situation. But so many ways that happens, it's so subtle sometimes that like I don't even like later I'm like, oh my God. And so just it happens in so many ways at so many different levels. You have to kind of constantly be sort of vigilant about it. But that was like a particularly blatantly bad experience. But often it's so subtle that we really have to check ourselves and catch it as well, and call people out when it happens.
I think I'm lucky, I should say. I don't remember ever really suffering. I got annoyed, but never personally experienced suffering from misogynistic behavior or speech. If I encountered it, I thought it was funny. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous, and just thought they were idiots. And why are they doing that? And it's so absurd. But I was lucky. I mean, I am totally aware that I could have not been lucky and suffered from it. But basically, to me, it was just something I shrugged off mostly. Even in a couple of situations where I probably should have been more worried about losing my job, but somehow I didn't worry. I don't know why. And life continued somehow. And I didn't lose my job, but I could have. I mean, I could see how maybe somebody else or me, if I was feeling more vulnerable, I could have been very scared by people who were above me, as it were, in the management system. But no, so I'm sorry. It's not that I'm proud, but it's always funny. One should think of it as something funny if one can, rather than I don't know, just laugh at them.
Yeah, I was not raised in a feminist frame, and I was never raised to think that there would be a problem because I was a woman. I wasn't educated. I went to a girls' school where had been previously trained to be the wives of great men, but at that time were really being trained to be the great men. And so I really proceeded, I think, like Orly, with no assumption that I was going to hit any barrier whatsoever. And then I hit one when I was about 28 in the legislature. I went to testify, and there was Representative Valson Giacomo, who had been there a long time. Mark McDonald, who just won re-election, was his second. And they spoke to me in a way that was the equivalent of being patted on the head. And I was just shocked. I thought, oh, this is what people are talking about. This is this thing. And so I was like, okay. So the next time I go to the State House, I go to testify. I'm in a Senate committee, and I'm testifying. And Dennis Delaney, he gets up, and I say to him, I'm testifying. Where are you going? And he says, I have to go to the bathroom. So I said, okay. So, and then I have to just concede that after that, I just never noticed. I just don't notice. And I know it happens. I know it happens. And I know that there are barriers in my way that are male and misogynistic, but I just am like, la, 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 la. No, I'm not paying any attention to you. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And that is because I'm a person of privilege. I mean, I know that. And I am a person of just who I am. and I really don't care what other people think very much, which is a good and a bad thing. Okay, I'm not saying it's the greatest thing, but so I'm sorry if you have experienced it. It's terrible, but I would agree with Orly. It's just ridiculous. Just don't give it any weight and don't take it in.
There you go.
That's
Some
it.
advice. Run with that.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
what it's worth. I don't know if that's useful at all. So, okay.
I feel like I have other questions now, like thinking about like the generational
Yeah.
context here, but put that one to the side.
That's
to
interesting.
Kind of expand upon Ryan, hi buddy. Ryan's question, I think about the connection within the youth, and I was just to be clear, I was an art teacher for 11 years, and like arts and those are spaces for the opportunity to create empathy and connections across the world. And so I think that's all that you do, right? That's so much of what you do. But I would love to know what is sparking curiosity and joy for you in this moment. Like I'd love to watch what you're watching these days. So what's on your Netflix or
Don't watch what
you know,
Netflix.
or whatever it is. You don't watch Netflix. So what are you
Your
doing
movies.
that is inspiring you, creating opportunities for empathy and joy?
Great question, Morgan.
Good food. I love meeting people. Meeting new people, meeting old people. I mean, people I know, and deepening conversations with them. I love meeting new people, hearing about what they do, what they think. But that's not what you asked, was it?
Well, she did.
You did?
What fires you up?
Great films fire me up. I mean, really great film. I'm always looking for the next masterpiece. It's very rare. It's very.
Watching on Netflix. Where should we be watching? How do
You should come to our programming, specially selected for you.
Of course. And when's the next festival?
Well, it's online too.
Some are online.
Some online, yeah.
The next screening is tomorrow. We have
Oh.
monthly screenings. Actually, tomorrow, an amazing Indian film, 6:30 Main Street Landing film.
There you go.
It's called RRR. It's really quite amazing. We've never shown a film like that before. It's an Indian blockbuster, but fantastic. No, of course I watch. Actually, we don't watch Netflix online. We subscribe to receiving discs. I know it sounds old-fashioned, but the reason we do that is because on the discs there are extras. So there are often interviews with the directors, or somebody will talk about the film. You don't get that online. So it's great. So that's what we do. And I we have a little film school at home, and we kind of book DVDs or Blu-rays, whatever. Sometimes we choose a theme, or we might choose a director and say, let's watch her film chronologically or something and learn something. So there's always something to learn. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm reading David Hockney's Spring Will Not Be Delayed. And I love this book because usually I read Spy, John le Carré, because they're fast and I can go fast. But this book is about his painting in Normandy, starting in the beginning of the pandemic. And it's a conversation with him and a film historian who's one of his good friends about painting. And they talk about pictures. And it's the most relaxing book. It's the most relaxing book. And my whole central nervous system calms down when I read it. And I thought, I think I have to start reading art books because of that. And also I like to paint. And so that is really, I like to do that a lot. So that's what I like to do. It charges me up. Yeah. How about you?
So the question is, I'm not a depth, I'm just checking. Is that what is currently inspiring you?
Yes.
Yes.
Joy. And what are you
Okay,
watching? Or what's
yes.
bringing you joy?
Well, let me think. Well, I just moved and bought my first house, so lately I've been inspired by organizing. But yeah, it's been good. I actually unplugged from all my work for like 5 days or something, just to like organize my life, and it was like wonderful. But yeah, I find a lot of inspiration in a lot of places. I find inspiration just in color and people's stories. Like recently we went to Tuscany, we just like listened to people tell the stories of how they make the things they make. And really just taking time to absorb other people's stories, because like we spend so much time focused in our own, like tales and worries, that I think sort of losing yourself in someone else's story can be fun for a little while. But lately it's organizing things and putting them in little boxes.
A little Marie Kondo action we can all relate to. All right, last question. What do we got?
Hi, I'm Jen, and
Oh.
I'm a new mom. Are there any moms in the house? And forgive me if you already covered this topic. I had a fussy baby and it just took out. Often my career projection has been very exponential, and recently in the last 5 months after having a baby, it's sort of plateaued. So maybe some advice for working moms and how I think the businesses are changing to accommodate women and their children to be with them. And I don't know if there's any advice around that in working moms.
Any moms?
Another question.
What? Oh, so are you a mom?
A
Are
mom.
you a mom?
A mom.
No.
I have a 23-year-old. She'll be 23 on Sunday, I think. And I think it's Sunday. It's the 13th. Yeah, it's the 13th. It's Sunday. And I would say that the most important thing is your child. And I worked a lot, but I spent the first 4 years really focused on Stella Rosa, and then I handed her over to her father. And so he spent a lot of time with her. He would play kitchen and school, and oh my gosh, she was the best. So I just think the relationship with the parent is so important, because when they become teenagers and they go into their room for 3 years, you will have the confidence that they will come out again.
I'm dreading
And
that.
they will love you, and they will want to be with you because you want to be with them. And so I just think that I would and I tried to structure my work life around spending time with my child, because it goes so fast. I know the days never end, but the years go fast.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's 23 years, you can't even believe it. So, and I think other mothers would say the same thing. So that would be my advice, is just do what you can to structure your life so you can, have a relationship with your child.
Yeah.
And it pays
Yeah.
off.
And
Oh, good. That's a great idea.
and I'm a year and a half in, so I'm a little
there
bit
you go.
a little bit ahead of you. And I'd say the mom guilt is real. I went back to work at exactly 3 months, and I handed over my 3-month-old to someone I didn't know for 40 hours a week. And that was the hardest day of my life. But I think what I've come to realize, there's a few things. One is talk about your kid while you're working to the people you work with. If you have a doctor's appointment for your kid, say you have a doctor's appointment for your kid. And just be really vocal about it, because I think that puts it in the front of people's minds, and they see you as a whole person and not just an employee, right? I would say the other thing that's been really important for me is quality time, not quantity time. So, last week my son was sick and couldn't go to daycare, and I was super stressed out. And my husband had a call, and so I had my son, and I was checking my email on my phone, and he's 1.5, so he is everywhere. And I just had this moment of the email can wait. Why am I doing this to myself? And I put my phone in the other room, and I just was totally present with him for that hour. And it was so much fun. I had just a blast with him. And then when my husband got off his call and we switched back, I felt ready to go. And guess what? No one died. The email was still there waiting for me. And so that would be my piece of advice, is just talk about your kid, make it part of your life and who you are, and quality time, not quantity of time. I'm so sorry. We went over because these people were amazing and I can't help myself. And such great questions. And I know you all have more. Hopefully they'll stick around for a few minutes, maybe, if people want to come. I know Orly loves talking to people. We just heard that. So at the very least. But thank you all for your time and your energy and for coming and showing up. And it's really scary to have events post-COVID. You don't know if anyone's going to show up. So I'm really grateful to all of you for being here. Again, thank you to the Media Factory, Hotel Vermont for hosting us again. My team at VSET, you guys are the best. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. And let's give a hand to our amazing speakers. Thank you so much.